One Instagram follow. That's it. One tap on a screen, one notification sent, and suddenly the entire competitive landscape of the WNBA's most watched franchise shifted in a way that most people haven't fully processed yet. Sabrina Ionescu followed Lexi Hull on Instagram. Quiet, deliberate, no caption, no public statement, no press conference, just a follow. And if you understand what that actually signals in the modern WNBA, it should make every single Caitlin Clark fan genuinely uncomfortable about what this offseason is building toward. Because this isn't about social media. It never was. This is about money, leverage, and a salary cap situation in Indiana that was already teetering before Ionescu sent that follow request. This is about the New York Liberty running one of the most calculated roster acquisition strategies in recent WNBA history, while the Fever are stuck managing 4 simultaneous financial fires with a bucket that isn't big enough to handle any of them. And most critically, this is about a 3-year championship window for the most marketable player in women's basketball history, a window that is already open, already ticking, and already being threatened before Indiana has even had a chance to build what it was supposed to become. We are going deep on every layer of this today. The contract mechanics that put Indiana at a structural disadvantage before negotiations even start. The cap math that makes this situation genuinely frightening. The market value numbers that reveal exactly how difficult matching any offer for Lexi Hull is going to be. The New York blueprint that explains why Ionescu's follow was the opening move of something much larger. And the Caitlin Clark timeline that puts all of it into the sharpest possible focus. Because when you understand what these 3 seasons actually represent for Indiana's franchise trajectory, the stakes of losing a single role player start to look very different. Let's start where this story actually begins. Sabrina Ionescu is one of the most competitive players in the WNBA. She does not do things accidentally. She does not follow random players on Instagram out of idle curiosity or a general spirit of camaraderie across the league. When a player of her profile on a franchise of New York stature follows a restricted free agent who plays for the team with the most media attention in women's basketball history, that is a message. It is being sent to Lexi Hull, to her representation, to every front office in the league, and to Indiana's coaching staff and ownership group simultaneously. In the modern era of professional sports recruitment, social media has become one of the primary channels through which interest gets communicated before formal processes begin. Agents watch these signals obsessively. Players understand what they mean. A follow from a franchise cornerstone to a free agent target is the equivalent of a wink across a crowded room. It says, "We see you, we want you, and we have the resources to make it worth your while." And when that follow comes from a player whose team just won a championship, whose organization has demonstrated the ability to construct and retain elite rosters, and whose city offers every commercial advantage that Indianapolis cannot match, it carries enormous weight. The reason this particular follow sent shockwaves through Indiana's front office isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. Recruitment in the WNBA operates on compressed timelines with limited public visibility. By the time offer sheets are being formally submitted, the real conversation has already been happening for weeks through exactly these kinds of soft signals. Ionescu's follow told Hull's camp that New York is serious. It told Indiana that the Liberty are coming. And it told the rest of the league that one of the most coveted restricted free agents in this offseason class already has a very powerful admirer who plays for a very well-funded organization. Indiana has now been put on notice. The question is whether their cap situation gives them any realistic ability to respond. Here's where the narrative that has dominated most coverage of this situation goes dangerously wrong. The mainstream framing has been reassuring to Indiana fans. Lexi Hull is a restricted free agent, which means the Fever have the right to match any offer she receives, which means they can keep her no matter what. That sounds like control. It sounds like leverage. It sounds like Indiana holds the cards here. It is almost entirely misleading. Restricted free agency does give Indiana a matching right. That part is accurate. But the actual mechanics of how restricted free agency operates under WNBA rules create a set of conditions that are far more favorable to the competing team than to the team trying to retain its player. And once you understand those mechanics clearly, the reassuring framing falls apart completely.
Here is what restricted free agency actually allows. Lexi Hull can sit down with any franchise in the league. She can have conversations, take meetings, listen to pitches about roster construction, organizational vision, city lifestyle, commercial opportunities, all of it. She can negotiate formally with teams that have available cap space. She can receive official offer sheets from competing organizations, and at that point, Indiana's options reduce to a single binary choice: match the exact number on that offer sheet or watch her walk. That's it. No negotiation, no counter-proposal, no creative conversation about a restructured deal that works better for both sides. Match the dollar figure precisely or lose the player entirely. The rules do not allow for the middle ground that Indiana would desperately need in this situation, and that distinction is enormous. Because what it means in practice is that the Fever cannot get out ahead of this. They cannot have a frank, private conversation with Hall before the market opens and work out an arrangement at a number the team can actually absorb. They cannot offer her something slightly below what New York might put on the table while sweetening the deal with other incentives. Once another team submits a formal offer sheet, Indiana is reactive. Zero flexibility, zero room to maneuver, just match or don't. And New York, exactly the team Sabrina Ionescu plays for, exactly the team that just sent a very public signal of interest, absolutely has the cap structure to put a number in front of Hall that will make Indiana's front office break into a cold sweat. The trap was already set. Ionescu's follow just made clear that someone very capable is about to spring it. To understand why Indiana's matching situation is so precarious, you need to understand what Lexi Hull's market value actually looks like in the current WNBA salary landscape. And the clearest benchmark for that valuation just got established a few weeks ago. Bridget Carleton signed with the Minnesota Lynx for $1.4 million per year. That number matters enormously for this conversation. Carleton and Hall occupy the same functional tier in the league. Both are elite 3-and-D wings, both bring the kind of championship-level intangibles, communication on defense, reliable corner shooting, physical toughness, and playoff environments that teams with title aspirations specifically seek out. Carleton is arguably the better player, but not dramatically so. They're operating at comparable levels of effectiveness, playing comparable roles, producing comparable impact on the teams that deploy them. So if Carleton just reset the market at $1.4 million per year, what does that tell us about Hall's asking price? A conservative and reasonable estimate puts Hall somewhere in the $800,000 to $1 million range per season. That accounts for the slight tier difference between her and Carleton, while reflecting the genuine demand that a player of her profile generates when multiple organizations with cap space are competing for the same scarce skill set. And here is where the brutal reality for Indiana comes into focus. That number is not outrageous. It is not a supermax demand from a player overvaluing herself. It is a completely reasonable market rate for what Hall provides, and multiple franchises across this league can afford to offer it. The Fever, given their current committed salary obligations, almost certainly cannot. This is not a negotiating posture. It is not Hall's camp playing hardball to squeeze extra money out of a team that would love to keep her at a discount. It is the direct mathematical consequence of roster construction decisions that were made over multiple seasons, now colliding with a free agency market that has been fundamentally and permanently altered by Caitlin Clark's arrival in women's basketball. The sport's financial ecosystem shifted the moment Clark entered the league. The salary cap has not shifted with it, at least not yet, not in time to help Indiana navigate this particular offseason. And the Fever are standing at the intersection of a new financial reality and an old cap structure with a roster full of contracts that were designed for a world that no longer exists. The trap didn't materialize overnight. It was built over years, and now Indiana has to live in it. Let's walk through the actual committed money, because this is where abstract concern becomes concrete crisis. Caitlin Clark is on her rookie maximum contract. In isolation, that sounds fine. She's the most valuable player in the sport, and Indiana has her under contract. But rookie max deals escalate. Every year that passes, her cap hit grows. She is currently the best bargain in professional women's basketball, but that bargain has an expiration date, and the clock is already running.
Aaliyah Boston is on a rookie contract that is about to escalate significantly. Boston is not a complimentary piece. She is an elite defensive anchor, one of the most important two-way players Indiana has, and she is absolutely non-negotiable in terms of retention. The Fever cannot let her walk under any scenario where they are still attempting to build a championship contender around Clark. Her contract escalation is coming, whether Indiana is ready for it financially or not. Kelsey Mitchell is hitting unrestricted free agency, not restricted, unrestricted. That distinction is critical because it means Indiana has precisely zero leverage if another team decides to offer Mitchell maximum money. And Mitchell is their second-best player. She is the primary offensive creator alongside Clark, the player who takes pressure off the offense when defenses collapse entirely on Clark, and the veteran presence who has been critical to whatever competitive credibility Indiana has built over the past 2 seasons. Losing her would be devastating. Retaining her is going to be expensive. Then there is Alyssa Smith, a talented player whose 2024 season did not go according to plan. Her efficiency metrics dropped, her three-point shooting declined, her overall statistical line fell from the kind of production Indiana expected when they committed to her contract. She has generated genuine trade interest from other organizations, but Indiana has not yet been able to convert that interest into an actual deal, which means she remains on the books, consuming cap space while providing less value than she was acquired to deliver. 4 significant commitments, 4 salary obligations eating into a cap structure before the Fever's front office even begins to contemplate what to offer Lexi Hull or how to handle any of the other perimeter depth questions this roster is facing. The WNBA's projected team salary cap for 2025 sits at approximately $1.46 million. The maximum individual player salary is around $241,000. These numbers would have made sense before Clark's presence rewrote the economic framework of women's basketball entirely. They are the numbers Indiana has to work within regardless. And they do not work. Not at Hall's realistic market value, not with Mitchell's unrestricted situation demanding parallel attention and resources, not with Boston's escalation coming, not with Smith's contract still unresolved. The math is broken, and fixing it requires making choices that all carry significant costs with no clean solution available. That is the environment Indiana is operating in. That is the context Ionescu's follow landed in. And that is why what looked like a simple social media moment is actually the visible surface of a structural crisis that has been building for multiple off-seasons. The other half of this equation is the Liberty's cap situation, and it is dramatically more favorable than the coverage of this story has generally acknowledged. Most of the discourse has focused on Indiana's problems. Far less attention has been paid to exactly how well-positioned New York is to exploit them. The Liberty enter this offseason carrying 3 players at or near maximum contract territory: Sabrina Ionescu, Jonquel Jones, and Breanna Stewart. On the surface, that sounds like a team as financially committed as Indiana, but the critical details underneath that surface picture change the math entirely. Stewart has reportedly indicated a willingness to accept a pay reduction of approximately $200,000 to keep the championship core intact. Ionescu is widely expected to sign at a regular maximum rate rather than pursuing a supermax designation. Jones is in a similar conversation. These are players who have already maximized individual earning potential. They have the championship hardware, they have the legacy. They are now in the phase of their careers where winning additional titles and playing alongside elite teammates matters more than squeezing every available dollar out of their contracts. When veterans at that level start voluntarily reducing their salary demands, it creates meaningful cap flexibility, and that flexibility is specifically designed to be deployed in situations exactly like the Lexi Hull free agency. Beyond their core three, the rest of New York's roster is composed almost entirely of restricted free agents and minimum contract players who will either re-sign at the minimum or simply aren't in the WNBA. That is not a weakness, that is deliberate roster architecture. It is how a front office that has demonstrated genuine financial sophistication creates the flexibility to add quality players at critical moments without sacrificing the championship core that earned those moments in the first place. New York also enters 2025 with significant reinforcements already incoming. Temi Fogbenley, a 6'1" center, is returning and immediately addresses the interior size that was exposed during the finals. Raquel Carrera is coming over from overseas, bringing international experience to a roster that already has global depth. Reports of additional international talent joining remain unconfirmed, but are circulating with enough consistency to take seriously. Rebecca Allen is a restricted free agent they can bring back at minimum cost. Nyla Smith is in the same position. Kayla Thornton proved during the championship run that she is a reliable playoff rotation piece on a minimum deal. Run all of that back together. The Liberty can potentially return their entire championship core with veterans voluntarily managing their salary demands. They can add multiple high-ceiling international talents. They can retain their key restricted free agents at minimum cost. And after doing all of that, they still have sufficient room in their cap structure to offer Lexi Hull somewhere in the $800,000 to $1 million range.
Indiana cannot match that. Not with Mitchell's unrestricted free agency demanding simultaneous resources, not with Boston's contract escalating, not with Clark's rookie max going up, not with Smith's situation still clouding the books. The Fever are watching this unfold from a position of structural disadvantage, and Ionescu's follow was New York publicly signaling that they understand Indiana's position exactly as well as Indiana does. The easy narrative here is that Sophie Cunningham can fill the void. Both are 3-and-D wings. Both bring toughness and competitive intensity. Both can hit corner threes and guard at a high level. The surface-level comparison seems to support a straightforward replacement argument, and that argument is wrong in ways that matter, specifically when playoff basketball starts. What makes Hull and Cunningham valuable isn't just that each of them individually can play that role. It's that Indiana has two players who can play that role at a high level simultaneously. That redundancy is not a luxury. It is a competitive asset with specific playoff value that gets exposed the moment it disappears. Having two capable wings at that tier gives Indiana's coaching staff the ability to match up differently against different opponents in a series. It gives them the ability to manage foul trouble without the rotation collapsing. It gives them the ability to keep one player fresh while the other carries a heavier defensive assignment. It gives them options in the moments when opposing coaches make halftime adjustments specifically designed to neutralize whatever Indiana showed in the first two quarters. Losing one of them doesn't just reduce the roster count at that position, it reduces flexibility. It reduces durability across a full playoff series. It reduces the number of answers Indiana's coaching staff has available when the game gets complicated and creative adjustments become the difference between advancing and going home. There is also a signal problem that extends beyond the immediate basketball impact. Organizations develop reputations in professional sports, and those reputations travel through player networks faster than any official communication could. When a team cannot retain its own restricted free agents, players the organization theoretically has leverage over, it sends a message to the broader market about financial health, front office competency, and whether Indianapolis is a destination or a stepping stone.
That message gets heard. It shapes recruiting conversations. It affects which free agents seriously consider Indiana and which ones use a fever offer primarily as leverage to get a better deal somewhere they actually want to be. If Hull walks, the realistic replacement options are thin to non-existent at the level Indiana needs. Erica Wheeler is a free agent, but she's a point guard. That's an entirely different positional profile that does nothing to address a wing shortage. Ariel Powers is available, but is 31 years old with declining defensive mobility, precisely the skill set Indiana would be trying to replace. A wing in the 2025 draft is theoretically possible, but WNBA rookies almost never contribute at championship impact in year one. There is no developmental pipeline equivalent to the NBA's G League. There is no extended summer league for gradual integration. Rookies step directly into competition against the best players in the world, and the adjustment period is consistently brutal for even the most talented prospects. The trade route is effectively blocked. Indiana already moved their 2025 first-round pick to acquire pieces around Clark. Alyssa Smith has theoretical trade value, but given her statistical regression from 2023 to 2024, production falling across nearly every efficiency category, any deal would involve selling low and likely attaching additional assets just to make the contract attractive enough for another team to absorb. Kelsey Mitchell has real trade value, but trading Mitchell to compensate for losing Hull would represent such a severe net loss that it would effectively end any realistic championship conversation for the duration of Clark's rookie deal. Boston is untouchable. Clark is untouchable, which means Indiana is essentially out of viable trade assets that could bring back a genuine Hull equivalent without making the team significantly worse in the process. There is no clean path. There is no clever roster move waiting to be discovered. There is just a hard choice in a compressed time frame with no good options available. Everything discussed so far matters. The cap math matters. Hull's market value matters. New York's flexibility matters. But none of it captures the full weight of what is actually at stake here until you put it in the context of Caitlin Clark's contract timeline. Clark's rookie deal runs through the 2027 season. 3 more years. 3 more seasons of having the most marketable, most watched, most commercially transformative player in the history of women's basketball on a below-market contract. 3 years where her cap hit is dramatically lower than her actual value to the Indiana franchise, to the WNBA as a business, and to the cultural moment women's basketball is currently living through. 3 years where Indiana theoretically has more financial flexibility to build around her than they will ever have again once she reaches free agency.
This is the championship window, not some future opportunity, not a distant possibility that will materialize once the roster develops. Right now. These 3 seasons are when Indiana has the most favorable combination of factors they will ever possess simultaneously. Clark's outsized impact, Clark's below-market cap hit, and the financial headroom that combination theoretically creates. Once her rookie deal expires and she hits free agency after the 2027 season, she is going to command a supermax contract that will consume approximately 40% of the team's salary cap. The window in which Indiana can build a genuine contender around her without that financial weight will be permanently closed. Every single roster decision Indiana makes from this point forward either maximizes that window or chips away at it. Retaining Hull maximizes it. Losing Hull chips away at it. Retaining Mitchell is essential to keeping it functional. Losing Mitchell, while also losing Hull, doesn't just hurt next season, it creates a rebuild dynamic during the most cost-effective years of Clark's career, forcing Indiana into catch-up mode precisely when they should be pushing for a championship. And the nightmare scenario that multiple credible observers are no longer dismissing, losing both Hull and Mitchell in the same offseason, would be catastrophic in a way that goes beyond basketball analysis into organizational crisis territory. That scenario doesn't just reduce Indiana's championship chances, it potentially eliminates them for the entirety of the period when Clark's cap situation actually gives the franchise a chance to compete. You cannot build a title contender around one elite player when the second and third best players on the roster walk out the door in the same summer. The social media ecosystem has been connecting these dots for weeks. Multiple corners of WNBA discourse have been examining Ionescu's follow not as an isolated curiosity, but as a visible symptom of deeper questions about Indiana's organizational competency. Whether the Fever's front office has the financial sophistication, the strategic creativity, and the urgency to navigate what is becoming one of the most complex roster management challenges in recent league history. Fans who have been watching Indiana's cap situation closely have been raising concerns long before Ionescu's notification appeared on Hull's phone. The follow gave those concerns a specific, visible trigger point. The conversation has been accelerating ever since. Here is the dimension of this situation that has received almost no coverage in the broader discourse. Indiana's most dangerous competitor for Lexi Hull isn't specifically the New York Liberty. It's the entire architecture of the modern WNBA free agency landscape, which has shifted in ways that structurally disadvantage small market teams carrying multiple large salary commitments. When you compare Indiana and New York at identical financial offers, assume both organizations put $800,000 on the table, same number, same term. The gap between the two destinations extends far beyond salary. New York represents a superior organizational proposition by virtually every measurable standard. Better facilities, a coaching staff with a championship resume and demonstrated ability to develop players, a front office that has shown consistent competency in both constructing and maintaining title-caliber rosters, a city with a commercial and endorsement infrastructure that Indianapolis simply cannot replicate, where brand-building opportunities and off-court income have become increasingly significant factors in how WNBA players make career decisions in an era where NIL-adjacent thinking has reshaped how athletes value their professional choices. Hull attended Stanford. She did not grow up in Indiana. Her professional connection to Indianapolis runs almost entirely through her relationship with Caitlin Clark as a teammate. And while that relationship is real and meaningful, it is not the same thing as a hometown discount situation. It is not equivalent to a player returning to the city where they grew up, where their family is, where they feel a deep personal attachment that might justify leaving money on the table for something money cannot buy. Hull's connection to Indiana is Clark. Clark is under contract. Clark will be in Indianapolis regardless of what Hull decides. And while loyalty to a teammate is a genuine factor in these conversations, it is not typically sufficient to overcome a meaningful salary gap when the alternative destination is one of the premier franchises in the league, in one of the most commercially dynamic markets in the sport. The hometown discount framing that has shaped some of the coverage around this story is a fundamental misreading of what Hull's actual decision calculus looks like. She is not being asked to sacrifice money to go home. She is being asked to sacrifice money to stay somewhere that is not home, in favor of a situation that is already financially stretched, on a team that may be about to lose two of its best players in the same summer. That is a very different ask. Based on everything visible in the cap numbers, the competitive landscape, and the structural dynamics at play, here is the most probable sequence of events as this situation develops. Lexi Hull receives a formal offer sheet from the New York Liberty. The number lands somewhere in the $800,000 to $1 million range, a figure that reflects genuine market value for her skill set and the competition for elite 3-and-D wings in this free agency class. Dallas, or another team with available cap space, potentially emerges as a secondary bidder, adding competitive pressure and removing any possibility of a quiet, uncontested negotiation where Indiana could have a more measured conversation about what matching actually requires. Indiana then faces the match or walk decision in a compressed regulatory time frame, under cap constraints that make matching genuinely difficult without simultaneously restructuring other parts of the roster in ways that create new problems even as they solve this one.
The Fever are negotiating against themselves at that point. Every dollar committed to matching Hull's offer is a dollar that cannot go toward retaining Mitchell, toward absorbing Boston's escalation, toward any of the other financial obligations bearing down on the franchise simultaneously. If Indiana matches, they strain the cap to a breaking point that almost certainly costs them elsewhere, most likely in the Mitchell situation, which then becomes the next crisis in a sequence that doesn't end. If Indiana doesn't match, New York adds a proven championship-caliber wing to a roster that already won a title and is simultaneously getting bigger and more versatile with the additions coming from overseas. The Liberty become meaningfully more dominant, Indiana becomes measurably weaker on the perimeter, and the gap between these two franchises, the one holding the sport's most valuable player and the one that actually won the championship, widens at exactly the moment when Indiana needed to be closing it. The 3 years of Caitlin Clark's rookie deal tick forward, the window that was supposed to be the foundation of something historic for Indiana women's basketball ticks toward closed. Not because Clark isn't good enough, not because the pieces weren't there, but because the financial architecture of the roster couldn't hold together under the pressure of a free agency market that the sport's economic reality had transformed while the salary cap stayed frozen in a previous era. Sabrina Ionescu's Instagram follow was one notification, one small digital action that most casual observers either missed entirely or dismissed as irrelevant to anything that actually matters in professional basketball. But it wasn't irrelevant, it was calculated, it was deliberate, and it was the opening move of a competitive intelligence operation that New York has been running with methodical precision. The Liberty's front office knows exactly what Indiana's cap commitments look like. They have access to the same public salary information that anyone paying close enough attention can piece together. They know the Fever are stretched. They know the Mitchell unrestricted free agency situation is consuming parallel attention and financial resources. They know that matching a serious offer for Hull while simultaneously retaining Mitchell, while simultaneously managing Boston's escalation and Smith's trade situation is an almost geometrically impossible task given the cap structure Indiana is working within. Ionescu's follow told Hull's camp that the interest is real, the organization is serious, and the destination is a championship-ready franchise. It told Indiana's front office that the Liberty are coming, and that they are coming from a position of financial strength that Indiana cannot currently match. And it told the rest of the league that New York, even after winning a title, has no intention of standing still, that they are actively hunting the players who can make them more dangerous, and they know exactly where those players are and what vulnerabilities exist in the organizations currently holding them. Indiana is now in a reactive position in a negotiation they cannot win on pure financial terms. The Fever's only viable path to retaining Lexi Hull runs through an organizational argument, the Clark factor, the growing commercial profile of Indianapolis, the promise of what this roster could become, that requires Hull to voluntarily walk away from real money for reasons that are more about belief and loyalty than market reality. History is not encouraging about how often that argument wins when the financial gap is genuine and the alternative destination is New York City. The WNBA's history of players accepting significantly below-market deals to remain in a preferred location is not a deep or particularly consistent one. Players increasingly understand their market value, agents increasingly ensure their clients capture it. And when the competing destination offers a championship infrastructure, a superior commercial environment, and a roster that already proved it can win the ultimate prize, the organizational argument has to be extraordinarily compelling to overcome all of that.
Whether Indiana's front office can make that argument is the question that will define this offseason. Whether they have the financial creativity to restructure commitments in ways that make matching realistic is the question that will determine whether Clark's championship window gets built into something real or quietly eroded before it ever reaches its potential. The follow has been sent. The signal has been received. Now everyone is waiting to see whether Indiana has an answer, or whether the Fever are about to find out that the trap they walked into was more perfectly constructed than even the most pessimistic observers realized.
One Instagram follow started this. What comes next will shape the most important franchise in women's basketball for the next 3 years. And if you've been watching this situation closely enough to understand what's really at stake, you already know that the offseason that was supposed to be Indiana's moment to build something historic is instead turning into the test that reveals whether this organization is truly ready for what Caitlin Clark's window demands of them. The clock is running, the Liberty are circling, and Indiana's answer to all of it has to come fast, because in the WNBA's compressed free agency timeline, hesitation is its own kind of answer. That's every layer of this situation broken down completely. If this is the kind of deep analysis you want more of, subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop your prediction in the comments. Does Indiana match Hull's offer, or do they let her walk and hope Sophie Cunningham is enough? The answer is coming sooner than you think.